Yeah, everybody, my name is Lowell, and welcome to the channel. So, we're going to do a rivalry video today. This is for ice hockey. Now, I know absolutely nothing about ice hockey. I know it's hockey, and it's played on ice. That's about it. This is going to be 96 to 2002 Colorado Avalanche and the Detroit Red Wings. I have no idea who they are. So, let's jump in. Let's have a look and let's dip our toes into ice hockey. So, what better way than a rivalry video? So, let's jump in. Let's have a look
The
at this one.
accepted line on hockey rivalries is that the best ones are the ones that started before the moon landing. Age is the principal factor. So,
Okay.
Boston and Montreal usually top that list, and they hate each other for sure. Flyers and Penguins, Habs and Nordiques, Vegas and everyone. But not all that often do we see stakes linked to that hatred. Often we usually get one or the other. The Lightning and the Islanders squared off in the Eastern Conference Finals twice in a row, but I haven't heard it called a rivalry. The closest thing recently is probably the 2016-18 Capitals and Penguins, who hate each other, and faced off in the playoffs 3 times in a row, with the victor eventually hoisting the cup in each year. But that's only 3 years. For true power and true hatred that covers a pretty significant amount of time, we have to go back a bit further. To a rivalry that didn't burn terribly long, but man oh man did it burn bright. Colorado, Detroit. Mile High, Motor City. So many household names and so many battles and stories at the end of the century. Yarns of revenge and loss and brotherhood and growth and jubilation. It had everything you could ask for in a rivalry. Bitter hatred that spanned the borders of a millennium. And, a trait somewhat uncommon in many rivalries, an incredible and even amount of skill on both teams.
Damn.
Who were at their very best for the entire rivalry. Never in the NHL would you see 2 teams combine for so much hatred and so much power.
Okay. This looks very interesting. As I said, I have no idea
how dominant these 2 teams were during these 7 years. We need to do some counting. Here's how the 2 teams rank cumulatively in the regular season in wins, losses, goals, and goal differential.
Okay.
Utter domination. It's not even like these teams were consistently near the top. They were the top. The juggernaut teams to beat. The only time one of them wasn't first or second is when the Penguins eked out second place in goals for. That's really the exception that proves the rule.
Wow, that's pretty tight, isn't it? Wow. Okay.
It was the Avalanche and Red Wings League. That's cool and all, but what really matters are the playoffs. Did either of these teams turn their success into playoff glory? Did they ever? In the playoffs in this time frame, no 2 teams were more prolific, and it wasn't even close. 78 wins for the Avalanche and 71 for the Wings. That's enough for 4 cups each. Not even considering wins. They also made by far the most appearances of any team in these years. It should come as no surprise, then, that in every year from 96 to 02, at least one of these teams made it to the Western Conference Finals. Speaking of the Conference Finals, to embarrass the West even more, here's how many games every team played in different rounds of the playoffs. The Avalanche in the Conference Finals are here. 38 West Final games played. These are the teams who played games in the first round alone. The Colorado Avalanche played more games in the conference final, the 3rd round, than the entire league except the Blues played in the first round alone. Let that sink in. That's 22 teams. That means Colorado was consistently making deep playoff runs, more often than other teams were even showing up in the opening round. For the record, the Wings are over here at 25, which is still more than around half the league. That's awesome as well. Putting that into perspective in all of modern NHL history, here's every time a team has appeared in 25-plus conference final games over a 7-season span. Only the Lightning have come close since, and nobody has done it since there were barely 16 teams in the league. That is an impeccable piece of NHL dominance. Now, these figures demonstrate ownership and power, but that's just one half of this video's title. What happened when these 2 teams locked horns? Did they ever do it on the playoff stage? Oh yeah. 5 times. Buckle up for a summary of the most heated rivalry of modern hockey. Folks, if you have not seen clutch and grab era hockey, get ready. It is massively different from today's NHL. Hacks and slashes, obstruction left and right, chunking every other shot, goalies getting bowled over, and of course, fights. These guys are tough son of a guns. A large factor of what made these teams so good is their star power. Hall of Famers seem to be a dime a dozen for them. At every year's start, I'll add to the list of Hall of Famers to have played for them, and buddy, this list gets long. Even in just the first year, these two teams had lineups you would kill for. Looking at these lineups, it's important to understand not only how good the teams were, but how these players fit into a mold that was necessary to survive in the dead puck era. First of all, it was legal to hook and slash puck carriers and forecheckers. Refs put their whistles away a lot more than today, and goalies weren't treated like they were made of glass. You had to be able to take some lumps without missing a beat. But also, it was a lot harder to generate offense. At the end of the 96 season, the tag-up caveat of the offside rule was removed, basically saying if you enter the zone before the puck, you can't get it. In today's NHL, players would just have to tag up on the blue line to wash out the offsides and go back in, but not then. So all this did was give time for the attacking team to set up defensively in the neutral zone. Plenty of teams employed this style of defensive hockey called the trap. But while most teams could easily set up this defensive system, it took a special talent to be able to generate offense despite it. Additionally, there existed possibly the worst rule in NHL history, the two-line pass. Ugh.
Okay, so I take it that was scores per game. Okay.
Basically, a pass from your defensive zone to a player past the center line would cause play to be whistled dead. That means no headman passes, fewer breakaways, and much more stop-and-start flow of play in the game. In today's hockey, that's hard to imagine. To be a Hall of Famer in this era, you had to be tough enough to withstand physical abuse for multiple seasons, responsible enough to be a useful part of a defensive system, and skillful enough to give you an edge over the defense thrown at you. Or be one of the best goalies of all time. That certainly helps. 95 to 96 was the Avalanche's first season in the league after relocating from Quebec City as the Nordiques.
Oh.
To start off the new franchise, they made some
So they were actually a Canadian team. Okay.
splashy trades, courting the Devils for Claude Lemieux and the Sharks for Sandis Ozolinsh. But an even bigger trade mid-season would swamp those two. The Avalanche would send a slew of players to the Montreal Canadiens for Mike Keane and none other than Patrick Waugh, a first-ballot Hall of Famer at the peak of his goaltending prowess. Waugh had demanded a trade from the Canadiens when a certain team lit him up for 11 goals and his coach refused to pull him. The team that embarrassed Waugh? The Detroit Red Wings. Waugh wasn't the only opponent they embarrassed that year, though. The Red Wings went 62-13-7 for 131 points, one of the two best regular seasons ever. Off to a great start in the power metric. Ranked 1 and 2 in the Western Conference, any playoff matchup between the two would have to occur in the conference finals due to the seeding rules, and thank God it did. Both teams seemed destined for a berth in the finals, and their play left no doubt that they wanted it. Every other game,
it's kind of like rugby on ice. I like it. Okay.
had some pretty rough stuff, but nothing too egregious.
Oh, did you see that? He was trying to defend the other guy, and the one came up behind him. Damn.
In Game 6, Claude Lemieux checks Chris Draper, who did not have possession of the puck, from behind, sending him face first into the dasher. On impact, Draper would suffer a broken jaw, broken nose, broken cheekbone, and a concussion. Claude Lemieux...
Dang. That's a lot of broken bones.
He would be ejected and suspended for 2 games. This hit is seen as the event that catalyzed the defining rivalry of the end of the 20th century. After the game, Lemieux was quoted as saying, "The Wings should be furious at the way they've played in the last 2 years in the playoffs, not at this hit." A statement in which the Wings would find doubly upsetting because Lemieux's Devils had swept them in the finals the prior year. Wings forward Dino Ciccarelli would respond with an all-timer of a soundbite in a post-game interview.
"I can't believe I shook this guy's friggin' hand after the game. That pisses me right off."
The first chapter in the Wings Avalanche story was over, and both the spoils and the blood went to Colorado as they defeated the Wings that night and swept the Panthers to win their first Stanley Cup in their inaugural season.
Wow, that's right. So in their first season in the league, they won. Dang. That's got to smart a little bit. Holy moly, look at all the
The singular goal of the 1997 season for the Red Wings was to win the Cup. And the goal of the Avalanche was to repeat. The Avalanche won the President's Trophy as the best team in the league, while the Red Wings would finish third in the Western Conference. But before we get into the playoffs, there's one regular season game in particular we have to talk about. March 26th, 1997. Bloody Wednesday. The fourth meeting since the Lemieux hit, with the Avalanche winning all three prior. While Lemieux had missed the first meeting and Detroit had raised some lumps from Rene Corbet and Alexei Gusarov in the second, nothing much happened in the third game. It looked like maybe the rivalry would peter out before it began. And then we were treated to the fight night at the Joe. We had 2 fights in the first. And then, Larionov tussled with Forsberg. McCarty pounded down Lemieux, avenging his line mate with extreme prejudice. Foot engaged Shanahan, and Waugh and Vernon went toe-to-toe all at once. Almost every Avalanche player left the ice bloodied. As if that weren't enough, Deadmarsh went at it with Vlad Konstantinov 15 seconds later, then another Shanahan and Foot brawl, then a 2-for-1 with Keane vs. Holmstrom and Severin vs. Ward, Darren McCarty vs. Adam Deadmarsh, Jamie Pouchot and Uwe Krupp, and between all that, believe it or not, there was a hockey game, which ended in an overtime goal from who else but Darren McCarty. Mike Vernon would later say that the fights and the game itself brought the Red Wings together in time for the playoffs. They only won 3 of their remaining 9 games that season, so I guess we'll have to take his word for it. But naturally, just as they had the 1 year prior, the 2 teams had to meet again in the Western Conference Championship. After splitting the first 2 games, and a rough Game 3, things really started heating up, as Detroit took a 3-1 series lead in Game 4, winning 6-0, despite the Avalanche doing their best to amputate their legs. Easily the nastiest playoff game between the two to that date. It's a miracle no one was seriously injured. There were
Man, you see that hacking move? Dang, that would hurt.
even words exchanged from Mark Crawford to Scotty Bowman, to which the latter replied, "I knew your father before you did, and I don't think he'd be very proud of how you're acting."
Oh,
That is cold. The Avs
oh my God, that is
would
cold.
respond
All
with their
right.
own 6-0 win before being closed out in 6. Then it would be the Wings' turn to get a sweep and win the 1997 Stanley Cup. But even in victory for the Red Wings, there was loss. A few days after their championship win, Vladimir Konstantinov, Slava Fetisov, and team masseuse Sergei Natsakonov were injured in a limousine accident. Fetisov escaped with only minor injuries and was able to play the next season, but Konstantinov and Natsakonov suffered severe head trauma, and neither will ever fully recover from their injuries. The former's career as a hard-hitting defenseman in the NHL came to a sudden and tragic end.
Dang, that is sad.
Another season, another dominant showing for these 2 teams. On November 11th, McCarty and Lemieux would finally drop the gloves face-to-face, much to the Joes' delight. The Avalanche won that night, but who cares? Later in the season, we'd return to some wild-ish, though. Fittingly, on April Fool's Day. Nothing much was happening until a scrap midway through the third. Warren Reichel drops his gloves. Then an Av gets sent to the ground. Then Waugh comes to his aid. Then Osgood comes out, and they go.
The goalies. Dang.
Holy jumping! Right block! It's so hard with those arm pads to get them loose.
I know. How are you gonna?
Couple there.
Oh, got a few in.
Couple of big-time rights.
One of the best goalie fights ever. Deadmarsh pounded in Shanahan's face, and the game ended. 228 penalty minutes in this game, mostly because it was just called more tightly. The Red Wings won that night, but who cares? Patrick Waugh would later recount that it was after this fight that he felt the teams were going overboard with all the fisticuffs, and that they were losing sight of actually trying to win. So maybe this would catalyze a change in the teams, making them more of a methodical, skillful club. They beat the snot out of each other 2 weeks later. Final game of the regular season.
So, how many games do they play in the season? Let me know. I have no idea. No
Not
idea.
obscenely glorious mayhem, but still mayhem. The fury of the 97 season was definitely spilling over into 98. Colorado would edge out Detroit for the second seed in the conference, despite Detroit putting up 9 more points. Once again, the 2 teams were set up to meet in the Western Conference. Wait, what? Dallas? Where's Colorado? Colorado lost in heartbreaking fashion to the Edmonton Oilers in 7 games in the first round, choking away a 3-1 series lead and not scoring a single goal in Game 6 or 7. Detroit
Dang.
wouldn't be facing their bitter rivals this year, but I'm sure that was fine by them because they marched all the way to the finals and swept the underdog Capitals for their second straight Cup win. Pausing for a second, let's consider this. For 3 straight years, these teams finished top 3 in their conference, met in the conference finals twice, and won the Stanley Cup each year. Their combined record in the finals? 12-0.
Oh.
Unreal. And we're not even halfway through this era yet.
Dang.
Taking all but 1 game against the Avalanche, the Wings were riding high in '99, with all of Detroit abuzz for a three-peat. Once again, they and the Avalanche torched the West, repeating as 2 and 3 seeds. But this time, Colorado defeated their first-round opponent Sharks in 6 games to face the Wings in the second round. Man, this rivalry is slipping. Not even meeting in the conference finals? Pathetic. Didn't mean the hate had died down, though. Game 1 was a classic, close, nasty game. Forsberg boarded Brendan Shanahan, and holy God, I don't know how Shanahan stayed on his feet here. McCarty boarded Lemieux. Maltby wanted an OT. Detroit walked Colorado in Game 2. And Game 3 looked like it would be more of the same. But then the new guys took over for the Avalanche. Theo Fleury took a wicked high stick, drawing a penalty that the Avs would score on, and then scored one of his own. New guy Dale Hunter would score. New young guy Chris Drury would score. We also got a really funny soundbite from Bill Clement.
This line, I think, has been good. Oh, Sean Bodine got killed.
It all fell apart for the Red Wings, even as injured Chris Osgood tried to save his team. The new guys on the Avalanche proved too much, reverse sweeping the Wings and winning it in 6. The series was easily the least bloody of the 4 to date, but despite focusing all their energy on winning, neither team would win the Cup this year. Colorado would fall to the eventual Cup champion Stars in 7 games in the Western Conference Final. The first season of the new millennium saw the Avalanche go all in to grab another cup in a blockbuster deal with the Bruins, sending Martin Grenier, Samuel Paulson, Brian Rolston, and a 2000 first-round pick to Boston in exchange for surefire Hall of Famers Dave Andreychuk and Ray Bourque. With this trade, the Avalanche were showing that anything short of the cup was failure. 3rd and 4th place? What is this rivalry coming to? Because St. Louis was upset by San Jose in 7 games, the 2 teams would have to meet each other in the second round again. And this series, compared to the others, well, it wasn't much. Detroit managed to score just 8 goals against Patrick Waugh, who shut the door to close out the Red Wings in 5. And unfortunately, there wasn't much nastiness in this series either. Even for a clutch-and-grab-era playoff series, the physicality seemed to be lacking. Once again, the Avalanche would meet the Dallas Stars in the West Final, and again, they would lose in 7. At the trade deadline of the 2001 season, the Avalanche would give up a king's ransom to land the defensive legend that is Rob Blake, and a pretty good top 6 forward in Steve Reinprecht. This was partially to fill in the offensive hole in the D-core in the wake of trading Sandis Ozolinsh to the Canes. Accordingly, the 2000-2001 season saw a big-time resurgence from the 2 clubs, who again seized 1st and 2nd place in the conference. Oh boy, wonder how this'll end. It was almost ensured that Colorado and Detroit wouldn't score out to the West Final, just like old times. The Wings lost to the Kings, the 7 seed, in the first round. Incidentally, the series-winning goal was scored by longtime Av Adam Deadmarsh, who came over in the Blake trade. There would be no playoff matchup between these 2 this year. And just like in '98, that was just fine by the advancing team, as the Avalanche defeated the defending champion New Jersey Devils in 7 games to finally give 42-year-old Ray Bourque his first Stanley Cup. So, okay, the teams are still really good, obviously, and they're still winning things to show for it, but they're not demonstrating this power between them. They're just bandying around authority in the Western Conference like a hot potato. They're just ships in the night drifting past each other. We're running out of time in this rivalry. Won't they ever meet each other for high stakes again? On June 30th, 2001, the Red Wings would trade Slava Kozlov and a 2002 first-round pick to the Buffalo Sabres to acquire Dominik Hasek, Patrick Waugh's equal, perhaps his better, in the annals of goaltending legend. On top of signing Brett Hull, Luc Robitaille, and seeing Pavel Datsyuk rise through the ranks, the 2002 Wings were loaded with Hall of Famers.
Wow, there's
Those
a
three
lot.
names alone combined for 3,703 points in their careers. You think the Wings wanted the cup? They would not go gentle into that good night. So what would happen? This is the last year covering the rivalry in this video. For the sake of the rivalry, for the sake of the bloodshed, for the sake of hockey, would this era disappear quietly, fading into the back pages of the NHL history books? Or would it go out with a bang?
Back into the middle, McCarty shot, score! Colorado trying to get there in the middle is Maltby shot, score! Darren McCarty!
The cup win seemed to reignite the spark in these two teams one last time.
Check to the point, shot, score, score! Save made. Forsberg after the rebound, scores!
The last series between these two teams would be a barn burner.
Every pass, tip the magic, score! Chris Drew!
There were a few flare-ups, but in general, gone were the days of rage and fire and hatred. This series was 100% unadulterated will.
Scores! Inside, looking into the middle, scores!
As the hockey gods would have it, it all came down to a Game 7. The final chapter of the final act of hockey's most powerful rivalry.
Shot, score! Reaching behind the play, Sergei Fedorov, a shot, scores! Clean down low, Robitaille was open, shot, score! Robitaille!
With an offensive onslaught, 6 goals in less than half a game here in Game 7. The unthinkable has happened for the Colorado Avs.
Like the prior times these
Damn,
two squared
getting
off in
thrashed.
the conference championship, the victor would go on to hoist Lord Stanley. And with that, this 7-year era of dominance, of rage, of power, of glory, and of champions came to its end.
Are those two teams still around? So why did the rivalry just end?
First round disappointments in 2003 and second round disappointments in 2004 saw these teams drift apart before
Okay.
the 05 lockout killed any momentum they may have resuscitated.
05 lockout? What is that? Let me know. I don't.
The rivalry was in the history books. But nonetheless, the chapters it inscribed among them were some of the most entertaining and powerful ever. Time heals all wounds, as they say. Claude Lemieux and Darren McCarty would later establish a rapport after Lemieux offered McCarty some words of encouragement after the latter's successful battle with substance abuse. They'd even sign models of them beating the crap out of each other. McCarty would articulate over time that he was able to appreciate Lemieux the man separate from Lemieux the player. In 2016, this cooling of tempers was epitomized in a Red Wings Avalanche alumni game, featuring all the biggest names from this storied rivalry. And it was fun. There they were, two sets of 40 to 55-year-olds still pulling off some plays that only NHLers could. And there wasn't even an iota of ill will to be seen. It's actually a great watch. You can tell that everyone involved has this wry smile on, like they know they're just having some good fun for old time's sake. At the end of a war in which neither side is the clear victor, there's usually a treaty. Given the geniality shown between men who had fought against each other for years, the ceasefire pact signed by Colorado and Detroit seems to be an unspoken one, which is in some ways the most powerful kind. And for the most powerful rivalry hockey had ever known, what other kind would there be?
That's very interesting. Like I said, I don't know anything about hockey. I couldn't even tell you. Well, I know two teams, obviously. I guess those teams are still around. I don't know. I don't know what the 2005 lockout was, so you can let me know that. But that was very interesting. Obviously brutal at the start, trying to show that dominance and whatever else. And it kind of got a little bit less as, new people came on the scene, that kind of, maybe that culture was changing within the teams as well too. So it more came about winning the actual championship. But that was very good. That was kind of moving at the end there where they had that outdoor game, these two sets of warriors coming, that final battle, but kind of obviously not at the pace that they were, but that was kind of touching to see. I like that at the end there. A little great way to kind of bookend that rivalry. So that was very interesting. Very interesting. First real look at ice hockey. So like I said, it's kind of like rugby on ice. I kind of like it. I kind of like those. I don't know about the chopping moves with the stick. Obviously, they've outlawed all of that kind of stuff, as they were saying. So, tripping and all that kind of stuff. But it's very quick. It's very hard to see where the puck is half the time. I'm just like, I don't know where it is. Whatever. As soon as it goes in the net, you know where it is. But yeah, I wouldn't mind checking out some more ice hockey. If you've got any suggestions, let me know down in the comment section there, guys. Let me know if you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for joining us today. Make sure you stay safe, and I'll definitely see you in the next reaction video. Oh, you're still here? You want more content? Why don't you check out my Patreon down here? You'll get plenty more content and some exclusive videos over there too. If not, why not check out this one over here?